In the secluded, mist-shrouded hills of eastern Oregon, concealed beneath layers of official secrecy and deliberate forgetfulness that spanned more than a century, rests a revelation so profoundly terrifying that local officials went to great lengths to bury it from public knowledge. From 1852 to 1888, an astonishing number of over 800 pioneers mysteriously disappeared along a treacherous 20-mile segment of the Oregon Trail, their fates not attributed to the common scourges of disease or unfortunate mishaps, but to a calculated malevolence that defied comprehension. At the heart of this nightmare stood the Sacred Heart Chapel, a humble edifice of weathered wood that outwardly offered spiritual solace and redemption to weary, ailing travelers on the brink of death. In reality, this unassuming structure served as the focal point for what would become the most meticulously orchestrated campaign of mass murder in the annals of America's frontier era. What started as sporadic, isolated vanishings evolved into a chilling family-run operation, executed with such cold efficiency and ruthless precision that it elevated depravity to a new level of horror. The Grayson family did not merely commit killings for financial gain. They refined the act into a macabre masterpiece, documenting every extinguished life, every shattered household, and every shattered aspiration they consigned to unmarked, shallow pits in the earth. Before we plunge further into the abyss of depravity that engulfed the Grayson family and the countless souls they claimed, I must make a personal request of you, the listener. This channel is not designed for the faint of heart or those who prefer sanitized versions of history. It is reserved for the resilient few who possess the fortitude to face the most unsettling realities lurking in America's shadowed past. If you count yourself among those courageous enough to grapple with these grim disclosures, I urge you to subscribe to the channel right now and drop a comment below sharing the state from which you are tuning in. Your engagement and support are vital in enabling us to excavate and illuminate these narratives that others shy away from revealing. With that, let us transport ourselves back to the year 1852, a time when the Oregon Trail symbolized boundless opportunity and renewal. Yet for many, it delivered nothing but unmitigated terror and despair. The Oregon Trail unfurled like a vital artery across the vast expanse of the American frontier, channeling the aspirations of countless individuals westward through an arduous 2,000 miles of relentless, unforgiving wilderness that tested the limits of human endurance. For the multitudes of families who liquidated their earthly possessions, homes, farms, and heirlooms, in pursuit of a brighter future in the untamed West, each painstaking mile traversed embodied a delicate balance between optimistic promise and looming peril. The trail's hazards were manifold. Epidemics of cholera and typhoid fever ravaged wagon trains. Starvation gnawed at the unprepared during harsh winters. And natural calamities such as flash floods or treacherous river crossings claimed lives without mercy. Yet amid the undulating hills of eastern Oregon, mortality assumed a more insidious guise, one that presented itself with a veneer of benevolent Christian empathy, all the while coldly appraising the worth of a family's worldly goods and plotting their demise. The year 1852 represented the zenith of migration along the Oregon Trail, with an overwhelming surge of more than 50,000 determined souls embarking on the grueling expedition westward, driven by tales of fertile lands and economic prosperity. By the point at which most wagon trains navigated to the rugged Blue Mountains in Oregon, the travelers had already conquered nearly 1,800 miles of punishing terrain, leaving them physically depleted, their provisions critically diminished, and often mourning the loss of vulnerable kin to ailments like trail fever, dysentery, or other debilitating maladies that transformed visions of abundance into frantic battles for mere survival. It was within this environment of profound fragility and desperation that Father Mordecai Grayson founded the Sacred Heart Chapel in 1851, positioning it strategically as a sanctuary amid the chaos. The chapel, constructed from rough-hewn local timber that blended seamlessly with the surrounding landscape, perched atop a gentle hill commanding a view over a natural respite along the trail, a spot where exhausted pioneers frequently halted to allow their oxen to graze, replenish water supplies, and somberly inter their deceased companions in makeshift graves. To the passing emigrants battered by months of hardship, the chapel materialized as a manifestation of divine intervention. a luminous symbol of hope amid the desolation, where one could seek not only spiritual consolation, but also, if circumstances demanded, a dignified Christian burial for those who had succumbed to the trail's merciless toll. Father Mordecai Grayson, a towering figure in his 40s with a gaunt frame, piercing gray eyes that seemed to pierce through one's soul, and a resonant voice that exuded authority and conviction, had materialized in the Oregon Territory, professing to be an itinerant missionary, devoted to the spiritual welfare of those forging paths westward. His eloquence in discussing his divine vocation, coupled with an apparent depth of biblical knowledge, proved persuasive enough to win over even the most wary and skeptical of travelers, who had grown accustomed to encountering charlatans and opportunists along the route. Accompanying him was his steadfast wife, who adopted the moniker Sister Constance, a woman whose soft-spoken demeanor and seemingly extensive understanding of herbal remedies and basic medicine rendered her indispensable to families grappling with afflicted children or gravely ill relatives, offering a glimmer of practical aid in moments of crisis. Completing this ominous triad was Brother Ezekiel, Mordecai's younger brother, whose pragmatic disposition contrasted with Mordecai's commanding aura. Ezekiel excelled in manual labors, possessing expertise in animal husbandry and mechanical repairs, always eager to lend a hand to beleaguered families mending broken wagons or tending to fatigued livestock. Together, this trio cultivated an aura of unwavering Christian benevolence that magnetically drew in vulnerable families, much like vulnerable insects are lured to a deceptive flame, promising light but delivering destruction. The chapel's architecture was understated yet impeccably preserved, fashioned from indigenous wood with a modest cemetery adjoining the primary structure, its simple crosses standing as silent sentinels over the departed. Within its walls, crudely fashioned pews aligned toward an unadorned altar, crowned by a hand-carved wooden cross that Mordecai proudly asserted he had sculpted personally, imbuing the space with an air of authentic piety. A notable architectural element was the chapel's disproportionately spacious basement, which the Graysons rationalized as essential storage for provisions they maintained to assist impoverished and desperate wayfarers, though its true purpose would later reveal itself as far more sinister. The vicinity around the chapel was sparsely populated, consisting of a handful of isolated homesteads scattered across the hills, and a modest trading post situated roughly 15 miles eastward, fostering an environment of seclusion that perfectly suited the Graysons' clandestine activities by minimizing potential observers and reducing the likelihood of external scrutiny or interruption. The few local settlers who had interactions with the family typically spoke favorably of them, commending their apparent altruism and devout faith, for who else would commit their existence to ministering to anonymous, perishing strangers in such a remote and forsaken locale? The Graysons' effectiveness stemmed from their acute comprehension of the Oregon Trail's unforgiving exigencies, recognizing that upon reaching their vicinity, many families were contending with acute illnesses, severely depleted resources, and the mental fatigue accumulated from prolonged adversity. They shrewdly positioned themselves as multifaceted saviors, not merely ecclesiastical guides dispensing sermons, but also providers of tangible aid, including rudimentary medical attention, emergency rations, and even short-term lodging for those too enfeebled to press onward immediately. Denominational affiliations held little sway over these desperate souls, whether hailing from Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, or other Protestant backgrounds. The Graysons adeptly tailored their ministrations to align with the travelers' beliefs. Mordecai's versatility in various Protestant doctrines allowed him to recite passages in a manner that resonated deeply, prioritizing survival over doctrinal purity in the harsh frontier context. The initial documented vanishing transpired on September 23, 1852, though it would take investigators many years to reconstruct the chronology from fragmented evidence and survivor accounts. The Morrison family, comprising James, his expectant wife Elizabeth, their 3 young offspring, and Elizabeth's aging father, had parted ways with their larger wagon train upon entering Oregon Territory, opting to venture forth independently, buoyed by confidence in covering the final leg unaccompanied. When the Morrisons' wagon suffered a catastrophic axle fracture, merely 2 miles from the Sacred Heart Chapel. The proximity appeared as nothing short of providential intervention. James Morrison, in later territorial documentation, described the chapel's sudden visibility from the ridge where their conveyance faltered as a miraculous gift from the heavens, a beacon amid their misfortune. Brother Ezekiel, possessing an eerie knack for materializing precisely when assistance was most urgently required, arrived at the stranded wagon within mere hours of the breakdown, his approach calculated to exploit the family's vulnerability. "Brother," Ezekiel intoned in his deliberate, soothing drawl that would become a hallmark of his deceptive charm, "it seems the Lord has guided you to our modest chapel for a purpose beyond mere coincidence. Sister Constance has assisted in numerous births, and your Elizabeth appears on the verge of labor. Father Mordecai would deem it a sacred privilege to extend sanctuary while you mend your wagon and await the joyous arrival." The Morrison family, overwhelmed by gratitude amid their predicament, readily accepted the proffered hospitality, relocating to a compact cabin adjoining the chapel, which the Graysons had purposefully maintained for such opportunistic scenarios. For the initial 3 days, the situation unfolded with an air of normalcy that masked the underlying menace. Sister Constance attended to Elizabeth with tender solicitude. Brother Ezekiel collaborated with James on the wagon repairs, sharing tools and expertise, and Father Mordecai offered profound spiritual guidance to alleviate the family's mounting anxieties. The children frolicked in the chapel's modest yard under the autumn sun, while Elizabeth's father, Samuel, found respite for his arthritic joints in the cabin's sturdy rocking chair, rocking gently as he gazed upon the horizon. However, on the 4th day, an ominous shift occurred, heralding the descent into horror. Elizabeth's father, Samuel, was the first to exhibit signs of distress, complaining of excruciating abdominal spasms and overwhelming nausea that left him doubled over in agony. Sister Constance, with her feigned expertise, diagnosed it as a variant of trail sickness, a broad term encompassing the myriad afflictions that beset migrants, and commenced administering her so-called blessed remedies concocted from assorted herbs and undisclosed substances stored in the chapel's enigmatic basement. "The Lord bestows healing through the gifts of nature," she would murmur reassuringly while blending her potions, but occasionally, "the body requires a thorough cleansing of impurities before true restoration can commence." Mere hours after ingesting Sister Constance's elixir, Samuel's state deteriorated precipitously. His complexion assumed a ghastly, ashen hue. His respiration grew ragged and labored, and he endured bouts of violent retching and dysentery that weakened him further. James Morrison, his alarm escalating with each passing moment, proposed seeking aid from the distant trading post to the east, perhaps summoning a proper physician. Yet Father Mordecai interceded with solemn counsel, urging forbearance. "Brother James," the preacher intoned, laying a ostensibly comforting hand upon the distraught man's shoulder, "I have witnessed this affliction innumerable times along the trail. It demands its full course. To transport Samuel in his current frailty would undoubtedly hasten his end. We must place our faith in the Lord's divine schedule and Sister Constance's God-given talents for healing." By the 6th day, young Tommy Morrison, merely 7 years old, manifested analogous symptoms, swiftly followed by his 5-year-old sister Mary, their small bodies racked by the same insidious torment. Sister Constance labored with apparent indefatigability, formulating additional remedies, applying what she termed purifying therapies, and maintaining vigilant watch over the ailing family members, her demeanor a perfect facsimile of saintly devotion. To James and Elizabeth, who remained relatively robust yet drained from their caregiving duties, the woman appeared as a heaven-sent guardian angel, tirelessly combating the encroaching shadow of death. Unbeknownst to them, the reality was infinitely more malevolent and calculated. The blessed remedies dispensed by Sister Constance with such theatrical piety harbored precisely calibrated quantities of arsenic, a toxin the Graysons procured surreptitiously from nearby mining ventures under the pretext of rodent extermination. The resultant symptoms, agonizing cramps, persistent nausea, pallid discoloration of the skin, and eventual systemic collapse, mirrored impeccably the manifestations of prevalent trail maladies, rendering the homicides nearly imperceptible to bereaved relatives already inured to the specter of mortality from their arduous voyage. Samuel Morrison expired on the 7th day, his passing succeeded by Tommy's on the 9th and Mary's on the 11th, each demise punctuated by ornate religious ceremonies orchestrated by Father Mordecai, who delivered eloquent eulogies on the souls ascending to eternal peace with their celestial Father, free from earthly tribulations. The surviving kin, shattered by successive losses yet profoundly appreciative of the Graysons' ostensibly compassionate ministry, refrained from interrogating the rapid cascade of fatalities, rationalizing it as akin to the wholesale decimation of families by epidemics witnessed elsewhere on the trail. What escaped their notice was that, under the veil of night, as the mourners succumbed to exhaustion from lamentation and supplication, Brother Ezekiel methodically rifled through their belongings, compiling exhaustive inventories of valuables with the precision of a seasoned appraiser. The Morrisons had enjoyed modest prosperity in Missouri prior to their departure, their wagon laden with exquisite furnishings, durable implements, cherished familial relics, and a considerable cache of gold coins discreetly sewn into concealed compartments within James's attire. On the 12th day, James Morrison himself commenced displaying the ominous indicators of affliction. Elizabeth, now teetering on the precipice of childbirth and gripped by terror, at the prospect of losing her spouse alongside her progeny and patriarch, implored Sister Constance to deploy every conceivable measure to preserve him. The woman's retort, later recounted as profoundly eerie by those who unearthed the truth, resonated with false piety. "My dear child," Sister Constance cooed, clasping Elizabeth's quivering hands, "certain maladies serve as the Lord's summons for his children to return home. We must refrain from challenging his infinite wisdom, embracing instead his boundless mercy. Your beloved will reunite with your darling infants in paradise, and you shall nurture your newborn knowing your kin awaits in eternal splendor." James Morrison perished on the 14th day, mere hours preceding Elizabeth's delivery of a son, who endured only sufficiently to receive baptism from Father Mordecai's hands. When Elizabeth herself yielded to the identical enigmatic ailment 3 days thereafter, the Morrison lineage had been utterly eradicated in under 3 weeks, their dreams of a new beginning extinguished in the chapel's shadow. To any inquisitive outsider probing the family's destiny, the Graysons proffered a impeccably crafted narrative. The Morrisons had arrived in a state of debilitation and malaise from the trail's rigors, succumbing to a virulent strain of dysentery that occasionally obliterated entire households, despite the valiant endeavors of their devout caretakers who had perilously exposed themselves to contagion in offering solace during the final throes. Father Mordecai had bestowed upon them honorable Christian interments in the chapel's hallowed ground, and their earthly effects had been consecrated to the Lord's ministry, a sanctimonious euphemism veiling outright larceny. Yet the Morrison clan's obliteration signified merely the inception of a far grander horror. The Graysons had stumbled upon a revelation that would irrevocably alter their trajectory and instill dread along the Oregon Trail for the ensuing 36 years. Homicide, when orchestrated with meticulous forethought and cloaked in religious sanctity, could yield extraordinary financial dividends, transforming sporadic opportunism into a thriving venture of death. The triumph of their inaugural familial extermination imparted invaluable insights that would inform the Graysons' modus operandi for decades. Honing their craft into a deadly science, they discerned that solitary families presented more manageable prey than those embedded in convoys, that arsenic's insidious progression flawlessly emulated endemic trail afflictions, and that their ecclesiastical veneer conferred near absolute credence among distraught, faith-clinging individuals seeking scapegoats for their anguish beyond divine decree. Crucially, they realized the Oregon Trail furnished an inexhaustible reservoir of potential victims, individuals whose absences might evade notice for months or indefinitely, given the transient essence of migration. Unlike established settlements where vanishings triggered swift inquiries, the trail teemed with nomadic clans whose precise locations remained unknown to Eastern kinfolk. A household lost in Oregon's wilds could plausibly remain unaccounted for half a year or longer, with the frontier's perils offering myriad credible rationales for their enduring silence. In the wake of the Morrison atrocity, the ensuing months witnessed the Graysons meticulously refining their lethal apparatus, establishing protocols and rhythms that would sustain their longevity. Brother Ezekiel evolved into their reconnaissance operative. Patrolling the trail's ingress points to pinpoint viable marks, affluent households journeying unaccompanied or in diminutive clusters, particularly those already beset by ailments or vehicular malfunctions, rendering them susceptible to enticements of aid. Sister Constance advanced her toxicological artistry, trialing varied dosages and administration vectors to optimize lethality while preserving deniability, ascertaining that arsenic seamlessly camouflaged within herbal infusions, curative elixirs, and even sacramental wine, facilitating the dosing of whole families under pretexts of ecclesiastical or therapeutic benevolence. Father Mordecai, in turn, mastered the art of mental subjugation, ensuring victims' docility amid the demise of their loved ones, by astutely gauging denominational leanings and modulating his dogma accordingly. For Methodists, he accentuated miraculous healing through fervent invocation. For Presbyterians, he invoked predestined fate and God's inscrutable design. For Baptists, he underscored individual redemption and the assurance of celestial reunions. The chapel underwent discreet enhancements to bolster their homicidal venture. The basement expanded and compartmentalized. One sector for warehousing pilfered artifacts, another for compounding arsenic mixtures, and a third functioning as a provisional mortuary for corpses awaiting disposition decisions. They excavated concealed burial sites in a secluded arboreal copse rearward of the chapel, plots destined to cradle the remnants of innumerable casualties. The winter spanning 1852 to 1853 afforded the Graysons a respite for strategic deliberation and readiness ahead of the forthcoming slaughter season, utilizing the trail's dormancy to meticulously catalog the Morrison trove, determining retention, liquidation, or concealment. They initiated liaisons with illicit merchants in Oregon's burgeoning hamlets, forging alliances with individuals indifferent to provenance inquiries. Brother Ezekiel excelled in this facet, his unassuming visage and candid bearing lending credibility to tales of vending assets on behalf of repatriating families or those felled by natural fates. He mastered dispersing transactions across disparate locales, tailoring clientele to merchandise genres, opulent furnishings and domestic wares to affluent colonists, enhancing their abodes, implements and agrarian gear to pragmatic cultivators, ornaments and bullion to specialized traders. By the advent of spring 1853, the Graysons had metamorphosed from novice assassins into consummate hunters, adept in victim curation, execution tactics, cadaver concealment, and revenue extraction. Moreover, they had forged a communal persona, rendering them virtually impervious to doubt. Spring 1853 heralded revitalized trail commerce and novel prospects for the Graysons' familial syndicate. Their sophomore triumph materialized in May with the Hoffman clan, German immigrants of limited English proficiency, hauling a conveyance brimming with prized assets including masterful artisanal instruments, superior fabrics, and a hefty trove of gold representing their accumulated fortune. The Hoffmans epitomized prime quarry. Linguistic barriers fostered reliance on the Graysons for external dialogue. Their alien traditions rendered them enigmatic and potentially dubious to fellow migrants. Their evident prosperity amplified allure. Their scant English impeded heeding subtle cautions or articulating apprehensions effectively. Patriarch Heinrich Hoffmann, a proficient horologist, transported his craft tools and commodities to inaugurate an enterprise in Oregon. His gravid spouse Greta accompanied him, alongside 3 offspring aged 6 to 12, when wagon woes compelled aid-seeking proximate to the Sacred Heart Chapel. The Graysons seized the chance to hone their fatal artistry. This instance, they innovated, eschewing natural malaise on set. Sister Constance initiated minuscule arsenic infusions forthwith, masquerading as prophylactic safeguards against trail contagions, persuading the family that her blessed safeguards would preserve vitality during convalescence. My God, Heinrich uttered in fractured English upon Sister Constance's inaugural proffer. "You are so benevolent to outsiders. The Almighty shall reward your benevolence. The Almighty has already graced us," Sister Constance rejoined with rehearsed earnestness, "by granting the privilege to aid his progeny in distress." The Hoffman liquidation spanned nearly a month, affording the Graysons ample opportunity to scrutinize possessions and strategize dispersal of the invaluable horological apparatus and wares. It also permitted scrutiny of familial dynamics and customs, intelligence enriching subsequent endeavors. By 1853's close, the Graysons had eradicated 3 lineages totaling 16 souls, conceptualizing their venture as a commercial pursuit, demanding rigorous orchestration and scrutiny, akin to any lucrative trade. They commenced archiving not solely victim chattels but methodologies, missteps, and triumphs. These archives, unearthed decades hence in the chapel's concealed alcoves, afforded sleuths a ghastly vista into the orchestrated essence of the Graysons' atrocities. Penned in Father Mordecai's exacting script, the tomes chronicled each lineage's demise with frigid mercantile detachment, enumerating identities, timelines, appropriated items, elimination modes, and liquidation yields. Entries adopted an impersonal ledger style, commodifying human existence. A representative notation might state, "Morrison lineage 5 essences ascended. September-October 1852. Acquisitions encompassed 2 oxen. Furnishings, superior implements. Cadavers consigned to Cops Quadrant C. Projected yield $400. Technique, arsenic via therapeutic infusions. Span 17 days. Insights, diminish dosage cadence to prolong duration and mitigate doubt." As tales of the Graysons' philanthropic endeavors proliferated along the trail, they commenced luring prey who deliberately pursued their assistance. Families apprised of the virtuous Christian souls aiding migrants, unwittingly striding into the meticulously laid snare. The Graysons' systematic methodology for mass homicide underwent substantial refinement in their sophomore operational year, evolving from opportunistic killings into a streamlined apparatus where murder was but one cog in a broader criminal machinery. Father Mordecai, leveraging his incisive intellect and directive prowess, began administering their syndicate as a legitimate commerce specializing in extermination, demanding equivalent foresight and minutiae. The summer of 1854 signified a pivotal evolution in their tactics upon encountering the Weatherby clan from Tennessee. Charles Weatherby, a erstwhile Confederate officer, elected Oregon's promise over reconstructing his ravaged estate, journeying with spouse Margaret, adolescent twin daughters Sarah and Susan, and Margaret's sibling David, a adept smith bearing his comprehensive forge. Arsenal, the Weatherby's allure, transcended their affluence. Charles had transmuted residual holdings into aurum and adornments secreted in a bespoke wagon, but encompassed their acuity and innate wariness. Charles's martial tutelage sharpened his observational acuity and threat discernment. Margaret's erudition, steeped in trail peril literature, fostered circumspection toward outsiders. When the Weatherby conveyance encountered wheel woes near the chapel, Charles initially rebuffed the Graysons' overtures, cognizant of yarns recounting travelers ensnared by spurious benevolence vanishing eternally, with Ezekiel's opportune emergence evoking disquiet. "I value your pious generosity," Charles conveyed to Father Mordecai initially, "yet we possess the expertise and apparatus for autonomous rectification. We shall proceed forthwith." Mordecai, adept at deciphering psyches and recalibrating stratagems, retreated diplomatically, nonchalantly alluding to Sister Constance's observations of regional maladies, perchance cholera or dysentery, intimating quarantine merits. "Of course, Brother Charles," Mordecai acquiesced with feigned empathy. "A prudent guardian shields his kin, yet I would falter in my sacred obligation, omitting that Sister Constance has addressed multiple trail fever instances lately. Symptoms incubate stealthily, and mobility whilst afflicted propagates contagion and saps resilience." The contagion reference elicited Mordecai's desired response from Margaret Weatherby, fatigued from protracted travel and maternal solicitude for her daughter's welfare, prompting reevaluation of hasty departure. When youthful David manifested mild pyrexia the subsequent day, Constance deeming it an incipient regional plague symptom, the clan's resistance eroded. Perhaps, Margaret proposed to her consort, we ought to avail their hospitality until ascertaining David's ailment severity. Charles acceded begrudgingly, his tactical upbringing sustaining vigilance that challenged the Graysons. Unlike prior compliant victims, Charles scrutinized proceedings with analytical gaze, posing incisive queries on the family's provenance and prior aid recipients' outcomes. The Graysons countered with fabricated chronicles of triumphant interventions, exhibiting the chapel necropolis, designating sepulchres as those of terminally arrived migrants, accorded pious entombment. They proffered counterfeit commendatory epistles, ostensibly penned by recuperated clans progressing safely. "Brother Charles," Mordecai intimated one twilight on the chapel veranda, "I comprehend your prudence. A veteran learns selective trust. Yet ponder, if malice intended, would we delay? Would we target an armed sentinel with keen vigilance?" The cerebral coercion was nuanced yet potent. Acknowledging Charles's suspicions and pedigree engendered esteem. Positing him as formidable quarry diminished perceived threat. Evincing candor progressively dismantled defenses. The Weatherby annihilations extended nearly 6 weeks, the lengthiest interval the Graysons essayed, with Constance initiating infinitesimal arsenic via consecrated water touted for prophylaxis. Doses so minute symptoms accrued incrementally. Simulating organic malaise, David, the frailest, perished foremost, his demise corroborating Constance's admonitions, amplifying familial reliance on her proficiency. Margaret ensued, symptoms ascribed to caregiving strain. Charles, battlefield-honed, detected perturbing motifs, his and daughter's vitality amid others' decline, symptom peculiarities, Grayson's omnipresence during crises. Suspicions climaxed upon espying Ezekiel inventorying his wagon nocturnally. Confronted, Ezekiel professed security vigilance against fauna. The rationale plausible, yet Charles's intuition demurred. "Margaret," he confided to his ailing mate dawnward, "departure imperative. Anomalies abound." Yet Margaret's debility precluded transit, snaring Charles betwixt suspicions and devotion. Resolution materialized when Charles, foraging basement medicinals, unearthed a covert cache of extraneous Voyager artifacts, too intimate, valuable for voluntary relinquishment. A juvenile's plaything evidencing recent possession, an inscribed chronometer, and damningly, a contemporaneous missive to Oregon City undelivered, depicting chapel arrival and gratitude for nurturing kin. Charles comprehended evidentiary trove of antecedent homicides, his lineage systematically envenomed by professed saviors. Alas, epiphany tardy. Margaret expired nocturnally, and Charles awoke symptomatic. Oblivious the Graysons, detecting his wariness, expedited his dosage via supper-time adulteration, enfeebling the ex-soldier, as Charles languished. Daughter's bedside, he vainly cautioned them of Grayson's essence. Dismissed as delirious ravings, the maidens persisting in credence toward their murderers. The Weatherby episode imparted pivotal doctrines. Astute, dubious prey necessitated advanced subterfuge. Protracted timelines, though hazardous, bolstered verisimilitude and lucre. Superior protocols for discerning and neutralizing wary victims essential. Foremost, it affirmed even disciplined intellects succumbable via patient psychologic artistry, emboldening Graysons toward affluent eminent marks. Prior homicide evidence detection prompted enhanced concealment, incinerating identificatory relics, reforging baubles to efface marks, devising intricate caches for deferred retention or vending. By 1854's terminus, Graysons had slain 23 across 7 lineages, their syndicate a polished felony, yielding ample gains whilst veiled, self-perceiving not felons but divine agents, recompensed via victim spoils for ministry. 1855 denoted a watershed in Grayson's lethal trajectory, confronting inaugural grave peril, a target's endurance witnessing sufficiently to dismantle their apparatus. The ordeal commenced conventionally with Patterson clan from Ohio, yet culminated in Grayson's dread of exposure, compelling frantic future deliberations. Thomas Patterson, prosperous Ohio trader, liquidated holdings for Oregon prospects, voyaging with spouse Emily, quartet offspring aged 8 to 16, and Emily's sibling Catherine, spinster 30s, familial educator and guardian. Patterson allure transcended opulence, Thomas's aurum and notes conveyance, but encompassed respectability. Disappearance likely noted by associates east and west. Their convoy dissolved near Blue Mountains, solitary when encountering Ezekiel 5 miles Chapel Ward, absent malfunction or overt malaise, yet Ezekiel engineered openings. "Afternoon, brother," he hailed. "Admire your oxen, prime beasts. Trade interest for fresh victuals?" "Chapel stocks ample." Thomas, astute merchant, appraised warily. Ezekiel's zeal evoking caution. "Obliged," he responded, "yet provisioned adequately." "Proceed directly." Ezekiel prepared, pivoted. "Understand. Yet mention potentially salvific. Sister Constance treats mountain fever cases. Insidious, incubates subtly, enfeebling travel." Emily, maternal, alarmed. "Mountain fever? Unheard." "Ma'am," Ezekiel concernedly, hushed, business averse. "Constance's preventives effective pre-symptom." Thomas skeptical. Emily's progeny solicitude activated. Unseen contagion terror. Prophylaxis irresistible. "Thomas," she murmured, "consult medical woman? If plague, precautions warranted." Thomas consented chapel visit for intel. Intending departure, unaware dooming decision. Grayson's welcomed Patterson's with customary pious warmth, subtle coercion. Mordecai impressed Thomas via commerce savvy, Oregon acumen. Constance enchanted Emily with tenderness, child affinity. Ezekiel amused offspring with frontier yarns, skill displays. Hours post-arrival. Family consented overnight for Constance's mountain fever scrutiny. Predictably, incipient symptoms necessitated preventive remedies. Catherine Patterson, Emily's kin, first treated as childless devotee to niece-nephews, health zealous, eagerly ingested, urging others. Yet Catherine's analytic acuity noted overlooked details. Second night, spied Ezekiel wagon inventorying. Queried Constance, dismissed as theft preventive. Ezekiel secures guests' chattels, past pilferage. Plausible, yet Catherine noted anomalies. Mordecai's covetous watch glances. Constance's secretive compounding. Treatment compliance sickest. Suspicions peaked fourth day espying Constance adulterating Timothy's remedy with crystalline powder. Claimed blessed salt. Yet Catherine, pharmacist pattered, recognized inconsistency. Constance's defensiveness aberrant. That eve, Catherine opted feigned ingestion. Expelling covertly, convincing Timothy gamely. Outcome stark, Thomas, Emily, elders weakened. Catherine, Timothy robust. Pattern evident. Regimen adherent sickest. Sixth day, 2 Patterson progeny perished, Thomas moribund. Emily, enfeebled yet lucid, confided. "Emily," Catherine hissed, "poisoning suspected, familial extermination." Emily, initial incredulity. Ire, benevolent Christians, murderers inconceivable. Yet Catherine's delineations swayed. Do? Thomas, children dying, immobile. Catherine resolute. Flee, even lethally. Lingering fatal. Take Timothy, untreated. Catherine's desperate scheme, midnight egress aiding Emily. Timothy cabin flight, provisioning wagon with secreted aurum. Essentials. Agonizingly abandoning Thomas, unconscious elders. Prioritizing salvageable. As prepping departure. Chapel footfalls, Mordecai, alerted, investigating. Swift, Catherine urged. Wagon bed conceal under tarp, silent utterly. Mordecai encountered Catherine wagon side, expression frigid, assessing. Sister Catherine, softly. Rest essential, fever confuses judgment. Sleepless, Catherine steadied. Familial concern, prolonged scrutiny, gauging discovery. Perhaps Mordecai, constant, stronger, soporific, peaceful repose. Catherine grasped immediate lethality intent. As advancing, Emily emerged rearward, despite frailty armed Thomas's firearm. Away, sister, weakly resolute. Distraction seized, Catherine wielded iron tool, cranial strike. Non-lethal stun permitting trio's frantic flight. Wagon receded as Ezekiel emerged, rushing cabin. Likely concluding poison's labor. Escape odyssey nightmarish. Fear, fatigue, sorrow. Emily, toxin-ravaged, barely sentient. Catherine drove, tended Timothy, pursued vigilant. Directionless, trailed hunter paths, hoping encounters. Timothy, traumatized, mute. Emily, delirious, invoking deceased. Fourth day, Fort Dalles patrol. Indian activity probers. Catherine's homicide tale initially deemed delirious, yet evidence proffered. Remedy vial, powder samples, suspicious items. Emily corroborated. Symptoms arsenic consistent. Subsequent probe unveiled Grayson's atrocity breadth, yet affirmed timely flight. Chapel raid revealed Thomas, elder progeny deceased, arsenic evident. Grayson's fled, absconding basement spoils. Basement disclosures illuminated systematicity. Compartments hoarded dozens lineages chattels, sorted, labeled. Shocking. Mordecai's chronicles detailing Patterson as 37th target. 150+ slain in under 3 years. Murders, yields, methodologies, learnings. Catherine's endurance. Testimony heralded Grayson's downfall. Yet years for comprehending scope, perpetrator pursuit. Meanwhile, religious benevolence exploitation rippled trail communities, altering stranger aid perceptions. Survivors' psychic toll devastating. Emily succumbed within year, organs irreparable. Timothy matured scarred, distrusting clergy, nightmare-plagued, unmarried, childless, frontier guiding, safeguarding others from familial doom. Catherine obsessed Grayson's exposure, testifying military, territorial, federal, pivotal witness, recollections decoding methodology, secret archives. Yet Grayson's post-chapel flight, proactive trail knowledge, victim wealth, identity reinvention prepped contingencies for relocated operations. Grayson's pursuit commenced autumn 1855. Fugitives advantaged, terrain familiarity, amassed funds, identity fluidity, communal integration sans past scrutiny. Federal Marshal William Harris, probe lead, confronted unprecedented, not impulsive felons, but orchestrated slayers exploiting trust via piety, many disbelieving their culpability. Not passion killers, Harris reported. Calculating hunters manipulating faith charity evilly, resourced, intelligent reinvention capable. Breakthrough spring 1857. California reports dubious remote mission near Oregon-California frontier. Divine Mercy mission emerged abruptly, accessing multiple routes. Aid seekers vanishing mysteriously. Operators. Father Benedict Morrison, Sister Mary Morrison, Brother Thomas Morrison. Devout kin aiding charitably. Harris recognized Patterson testimony pattern. Chapel evidence. Mission strategically intercepted isolated, fatigued Oregon-California voyagers. Structure larger, basement expansive, outbuildings multi-purpose for homicide theft. Northern California authorities noted missing lineages matching Grayson's prey. Affluent solos, small groups chapel seeking. Evaporating traceless, Harris assembled federal military team, vowing no repeat escape. Evidence destruction prevention via meticulous execution. Weak surveillance from Hill conceals confirmed. Morrison's Grayson's. Resumed refined killings. Witnessed Henderson clan Missouri arrival. Prosperous farmers. 4 offspring. California-bound wagon-laden farming gear, domestics. Finances, Grayson's Henderson approach mirrored pattern. Mordecai, Benedict greeted. Wealth vulnerability assessed. Constance Mary targeted susceptibles medically. Ezekiel Thomas appraised possessions transport. Surveillance unveiled evolutions. Accomplice recruitment. Local traitor scout posers aiding lookout murder. Advanced cadaver concealment. Chilling, expedited annihilation experiments. Days over weeks deeming protracted risky. Harris dilemmatic. Henderson entrapment observed. Immediate intervention salvific yet flight risky. Delay evidentiary yet lethal. Decision forced. Agent spied Ezekiel mega-dosing youngest Henderson. Healthy mourn, post-milk violent illness. Act now, Harris commanded. No further familial sacrifice. Divine Mercy, dawn raid June 15, 1857. 2 post-chapel escape years, encircled slumbering compound. Escape evidence thwart. Interior exceeded horrors. Basement 20+ lineages chattels. Surpassing locale tenure. Multi-territory operations pre-Oregon since 1845. Relocating circumstance-driven. Death trail investigators nascently grasping. Mordecai's diaries chronicled psychic progression, early guilt, pious rationalization, mercy to sufferers, divine reward, later moral void, profit efficiency soul, lives inventory, murder operational norm. Diaries resembled thriving enterprise logs, humanity commodified, future expansions plotted, multi-sites, kin-operated varied routes, mass simultaneous killings, solo inefficiency bemoaned. Henderson early poison capture enabled salvage, testimony on manipulation. Poisoning as treatment, James Henderson. Seemed divine emissaries. Mary gentle children, knowledgeable sickness. Benedict scriptural authority. Murderer suggestion ludicrous. Grayson's psychologic artistry deceived warned. Intelligent via religious medical charitable facade. Constance interrogation remorseless. Angered incomplete treatments. Insisting families better deceased than suffering. Dying anyway, she Harris told. Comforted finals, possessions God's work not wasted. Mercy otherwise denied. Ezekiel silent, follower obedient sans moral query. Mordecai transformed. Charismatic preacher to emotionless killer. Miscomprehend achievements, investigators told. Eradicated weak diseased. Wealth redistributed protectable deserving spiritual solace. Horrible deaths alternative. Natural selection divine instruments. Investigation expanded. Records linked unsolved vanishings Western territories, unexplained absences, anomalous graves, remote religious illness reports patterning Grayson's. Completion. 800+ murders multi-states territories connected, likely undercount. Many unreported transients. Grayson's September 1857 trial sensational frontier proceeding. Prosecution. Territorial Attorney General Samuel Morrison led. Challenged concealed crimes deceased victim sans testimony. Pivotal. Mordecai's self-penned records, murder details. Methods, thefts, yields. Undisputable confessions. Catherine Patterson testimony contextualized execution. Manipulation. Henderson testimony evidenced post-escape resumption refinement, damning sites physicals, poison tools, grave maps black market correspondence. Defense claimed legitimate care, natural deaths, possessions, purchases, inheritances, yet prosecution proved death patterns impossible sans intent. Medicals confirmed arsenic over trail diseases. Records murder for profit explicit. 6-week trial national. Noted newspapers reported systematic trail family slayings by missionary posers, underscoring migrant vulnerability. Isolated aid exploitation. Mordecai convicted multiple murder, hanged. Constance murder, life imprisoned. Frontier female precedent. Ezekiel accessory. 20 years territorial. Executions imprisonment terminated horrific syndicate. Yet impact transcended. Altered stranger aid approaches. Amplified route patrols. Frontier religious confronted faith charity exploitation. Legitimate missionaries facing suspicion distinguishing genuine from criminal. Exposed enforcement communication frailties. Decade operation via interterritorial info voids. Spurring missing person systematization. Catherine never recovered trauma. Advocating traveler protections. Suspicious religious probes. Nephew Timothy scarred adulthood. Unwed, childless. Guiding families evading familial fate. Sites razed. Chapel 1858 torched. Mission dismantled. Materials repurposed. Communal evil erasure. Psychic legacy generational. Western families cautioned false missionary tales. Stranger trust perils. Case queried evil nature. Ordinary extraordinary crime capacity. Grayson's intelligent articulate. Pious pillars facade decade maintained. Demonstrated methodical, organized, sustained evil apparent community stalwarts. Disturbing, self-justified as service, eliminating weak, redistributing, moral corruption dangerous beyond greed. Grayson's legacy reminds frontier-shaped courageous pioneers and vulnerability exploiting predators. 800 victims dark westward expansion chapter. Revealing human good-evil spectrum. Story testifies vigilance import. Blind trust perils, innocent price evil righteousness disguised. Ultimately, Grayson's crimes warn dangerous predators exploit noblest instincts malevolently. Today, indeed 50-plus years post-justice, Grayson's haunt American West memory. Destroyed families, betrayed trust, truncated lives remind vulnerability. Desperation, exploitation opportunities. Catherine-like survivors' courage counter darkness, risking exposure justice. Saving futures, alerting authorities, public religious authority, criminal masks. Remembering honors, victims deceased. Survivors unchallenged, evil defiant. Grayson's story reminds darkest moments. Truth standers refuse, evil triumph. What think this frontier chill? Alters romanticized expansion views? Grayson's charity exploitation reveals human darkest misplaced trust price. If chills, hidden frontier dangers thoughts, shared dark mystery lover. Like support forgotten horror illumination. Subscribe Misshaping America Truths. Next Pioneer Conquer Tales. Remember surviving Grayson's like. Murder family business, evil religious devotion masked.